What a year it has been. Looking back in 2025, there's been so many changes in AI, and when you're working in it day in, day out, you tend to miss some of these because it's just a constant change. Things are always progressing, new models, new tools. But if we take a moment to just take a step back, look at where we've come from, there's so much that's happened. So in episode 72 of Tool Use, I'm joined again by Richardson Dackam. He joined us in episode 64, the N8N Deep Dive, and now he's back again to just reflect on the year.
Well, right now, I think Gemini 3 and GPT-5 are definitely the two frontier model that everyone has their mind on. We didn't expect that to happen, but the way OpenAI came back with GPT-5, there were a lot of rumor. Are they going to build a better model, stronger model? And then it looks like they did, because I think GPT-5 was 5.2 was really a groundbreaking model that really surprised everyone. I think it was completely very mind-blowing when it came out.
And Sam calling the code red, being like, all projects on hold except for this, we need to get it done. Because 5.1 came out a month prior. Like our iteration cycle is even accelerating for how fast these things are getting released.
Yes, it's crazy. I think they got really scared of Google growth, but I think it's also a mistake from him not to use to continue working on ads, because I think that ads will make models better and it will help them make more money. Because at the end of the day, it's still a business. They need to generate revenue, and there's a huge advantage of having ads that you can learn what customer wants. You can understand better the type of query they're sending and see what queries are more valuable, what kind of results are more valuable. So I think the code red, although they were able to release GPT 5.2, I think was also a little bit of a mistake, because there's all these other things that should still keep going, essentially. And they decided to just put a big pause on that.
It's always interesting seeing how these business priorities shape up. I'm actually on the fence about ads just because I worry, and it depends how it's done. I've talked to companies who want to either like prepend or append an ad to a message, and that's a very justifiable way to monetize for users. But I'm worried once we start getting it embedded in the message itself. Like, is ChatGPT actually giving you the best answer to your query, or is it slanted by who's the top advertised spend of that month?
There's a lot of demand for the energy, but the biggest problem seems to be how to get that energy and how to get there. Your hand on transformers, on electrician, because I think about like 55% of the population of electrician in the US are about to retire. So we're going to have this big wave of companies looking to hire more people, and then they can't find people because they're not in the market yet. And so I think energy is a really big problem. I think their spending is kind of justified, because you have to think about it. You're like, if they don't spend the money to get the chips, then they're not really addressing the demand, and they kind of have to force the incumbent in the energy market to completely improve their infrastructure, because right now it's still old school. We're dealing with like super AI with an infrastructure from the 1950s or 1940s or whatever. And so I think they have to put pressure on all those electricity companies to essentially increase the grid, improve the grid, so that there's more energy in the US, because at the end of the day, we need the energy in order to have this AI revolution.
Yeah, 100%. I think it was just recently, like within this past week, that Google acquired a data center that has its own energy supply. I don't know if it's nuclear or whatnot, but it's just all of these big players getting in there because, yeah, energy is the bottleneck. And it's a type of issue that needs to be solved at the societal level, just because, sure, Meta or whomever can build their own nuclear facility to power their thing. But in the interim, there's going to be draining from the grid. And we're already experiencing like rolling blackouts and other issues. And especially with this difficult PR that AI is facing, where people are seeing like hyper focusing on a lot of the negatives. If their electricity bill starts to go up and they're not getting the benefits of AI, that's going to be a big public concern. And then that percolates up to the politicians, which could put in over restrictive regulation. And then all of a sudden we're just like falling behind in the race. So it's really a high imperative to like figure out this energy issue in a sustainable way.
I think this is definitely the biggest downside. Electricity bill are going to go up. But a lot of those companies are also operating in island mode, where they literally are their own generator. They just produce their own energy outside of the grid. And this is becoming more and more common in most of those data centers, because when you're building a model and you're using training to train your model, if it stops even 1 second, you're losing billions of dollars training that model. So to reduce this kind of risk, it's better for them to run an island mode where they can control all the variables so that they're not affected by the energy going down for, I don't know, just a fraction of a second and ruining the entire training they were doing with that model.
I know in Canada we're trying to put a bit more investment into data centers and whatnot, but I don't know how well thought out the plan is in terms of electricity generation at the same time because things like solar don't work as well up here. So we got to be a little more broad in our approach to solving these issues.
You know what? Surprisingly, Canada is really well placed to take advantage of the energy, I guess, rush of like the gold rush because there's these things in Manitoba, like having a river that they can transform into like a power source. Quebec is a really big producer of energy, and a lot of companies are going to look for clean energy because they also still have to do their mandate with carbon, right? So now you're in this world where in terms of PR, they want to make sure that they are carbon neutral, but in terms of the future and the growth, they still want to produce as much energy as possible. And most of those data centers are operating using natural gas, which is not really the cleanest energy you can use, but they don't have a choice because they're trying to address the demand. And when it comes to AI is more important to them than their PR, so they're choosing like to use like gas and stuff like that.
100%. It's an interesting thing to keep the fingers on the pulse of just to see how it plays out. Before I go too far down this, I do want to contrast just comparing the models that are out now to like January 1st of the year. So I did a little look back, and GPT 4.0 and o1 preview, along with Claude 3.5 Sonnet, were the leading of the pack January 1st. And that was like the introduction to thinking models. Like prior to o1, everything was just instant request response. And actually now having the model to do greater time test compute and actually put more effort into the reasoning process, we're getting way better results. And now it's being replicated all over. So how have you enjoyed seeing the progression of models throughout the year?
It's crazy to think that January was o1. I already forgot about o1. It was not even long ago, right? I would not even imagine myself using o1 for any of the tasks that I'm doing right now. So
Yeah.
what surprised me about the progression is the cost. Like the costs keep going down. I know some model were quite expensive, like cloud, but generally costs been going down, and then that's very very exciting. I think that this is actually a big challenge that those companies are going to face because the better the model they made, the cheaper the cost, and they're not really making a huge amount of revenue from that because they're getting more demand and they're making better model, but it costs less. So I've been really excited about that progression, but I'm really excited to see where this is going to go.
And on top of like those frontier models, the open source models keeps getting better. And now I know like there's a diverging opinion on whether we want to use open source models or not. Some people prioritize performance and quality of output above all else, in which case it's hard to compete with the frontier models. But still, earlier this year is when DeepSeek came onto the scene, where Nvidia lost 600 billion in market cap in a single day, just because DeepSeek entered and had the same type of on benchmark performance as o1 or o1 preview. I don't remember which one. But all of a sudden, these open source models, even if they're not like quite catching up, they're still increasing in capability, and those are going to be way cheaper for everyone to run once we start getting more like accessible infrastructure and stuff in place.
People don't realize that China is doing really really well behind the scene in terms of hardware. They've essentially hired ex Nvidia executive, and they've been trying to reverse engineer the ASML. I don't know if it's like a chip or factory, but they tried to reinvent it from scratch, and they've been doing really really well. So there's been like some report recently of how fast those chips are, and then it's comparable to some of the Nvidia recent chip. I won't be surprised unless if in 2026 we hear that China has a chip that is just as powerful as the chips that Nvidia currently have. So I'm going to put a bet on this one. I think this is likely to happen next year. And also, when Trump finally allowed China to use some of the chip, the president of China actually say no. He didn't want people in the country to use those chips, and I think it's because he want to keep encouraging people locally to try to innovate around that. Because if they start using those chips, it become a blocker when they cannot use it, or if the US start negotiating with them and say, in order to use this chip, you have to follow some of our requirement and stuff like that. So it's so interesting how politics is so tied into the entire AI race and war.
I know it's crazy. Yeah, necessity is the mother of innovation or something like that. Because yeah, when the first ban went out and China didn't get access to these chips without going through some shady pathways,
Mhm.
all of a sudden they were forced to, and now they're no shortage of resources, both in terms of like intellectual ability and manufacturing ability. So of course they're going to start putting way more money into it, and now they're just like you said, building up their capacity. I'm very keen on seeing. I forget which company it was. So many of them now have their own little AI labs, releasing a lot of good open research. But they did a full training run on China-made chips, and it was like not a frontier model, but it was a successful open source release. And they're just going to keep getting feedback from the whole world using their open models and just make them better and better.
I think they're doing the right thing. Because they realized that doing a private model wasn't in the best interest, and that the real race was actually in the infrastructure. So China has something like 3 to 4 times the power capacity of the US. So they've invested for years into their energy infrastructure, and then now, on top of having that capacity, they know that if they keep making it easy for those companies to get energy, eventually they'll figure out how to make those chips. And then even if the US, for example, make those chips today, physics still move at the space of physics. It still takes like years. It's not like software, right? Where you build the software, you can finish it in a weekend or in 1 week. In the real world in physics and electricity, you still have to wait 5 years. I don't know, like 24 months, 100 months for a transformer and stuff like that. So that's not changing.
Semi-analysis does a way better job than I do on this type of thing. But once you start hitting the 3 or 4 nanometer level of these chips, we can't get that much smaller because there's leakage. So all of a sudden, we are hitting like approaching the limit of physics. And then, like you said, it's just the time required to do these experiments. I know one thing I'm excited about that I'd love to hear your thoughts on are the new types of computing. Like quantum computing has been around for a while, limited ability there. But now Extropic came out with their thermodynamic chip. First one, very early stages. I don't even know if the developer kits have been sent out yet, but we're starting to explore these new modalities of compute where all of a sudden you don't need to rely on the traditional CPU GPU architecture. We can go with something much more energy efficient, which might not have the same precision, but same time when it's strictly for AI, you don't
Oh,
necessarily need the same precision. It's kind of just like how we've seen ones using neural tissue. So it's actually like a brain computer. And even if it doesn't have the same exact precision as silicon, AI doesn't need that level of granularity. It can just kind of directionally go the same way, almost like an analog computer. And that I think is going to be something interesting to follow. Maybe not 2026, but in the next few years.
I'm definitely excited about it, especially the fact that you mentioned about AI using like brain energy or something like this. I think this is really cool. Actually, I wanted to ask you because I think interface is going to be a big deal next next year because a lot of right now everyone rely on the chat interface with AI, but I think that we haven't really found the perfect interface yet. I think this is still going to be a work in progress. Like you think like when we had the dot-com boom and you know the first version of website, they were very like busy, like a lot of links, colors, animation. We still didn't really know what was the best UI UX for SaaS. And then now we're in that phase where we have like just like chat interfaces. So there's a question: like, do you think it's going to be voice? Voice is the future of AI, or do you think there's a different kind of interface that is going to happen?
Very bullish on like multimodal. Because I'm a huge proponent of voice. I think voice is like my optimal way, especially prompting when precision isn't as required as like a professional email. A lot of people line with me, but a lot of people just can't get into it. And I don't know if it's because they haven't given it sufficient try or they're just not comfortable speaking out loud in like a public office or something. But I think voice is going to be massive. I think dynamic UIs are going to be big. I was actually a lot more bullish on dynamic UIs prior, where you'll have almost like a blank screen and the component that you need will be generated on the fly. So if you need to see a graph, it'll make the graph. If you need a text box, do a text box. But someone at OpenAI I was talking to actually said he feels the opposite because humans love a well designed UI. And even though AI could theoretically make the elements, having a team of designers actually go through like user stories and product interviews and seeing how people interface with it is more of like a human touch experience. And because AI struggles at the creative task and is much better at like the analytical, the logic, the coding side of things, he's thinking that is probably going to be still with apps, still with like human designed or human augmented UIs. So I'm unclear about that. I'm also a little bit optimistic. I don't know if 2026, but we'll start getting more like motion control. We've seen some companies will have a wristband that measures like electrical signals, so you can
Like
actually use
Meta?
that as a wrist. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Maybe even like computer, because I know with like Xbox Connect is really good at just like doing depth perception, and maybe there's something with like the way you're tilting your head or like the expressions are going can actually be taken in this context. So I'm very bullish on multimodal inputs. I'm not quite sure what we'll get to next year, but it's going to be a lot. Well, we'll see a simultaneous increase in chat boxes as well as like a move away from it as like everyone kind of catches up, but everyone who's been doing it for a while is like going on to the next step.
I feel like Google Map and maps in general are still haven't really taken advantage of AI yet. I think there's a huge gap into how maps work, and we can do a lot better with that. Um, ChatGPT with the latest UI made an improvement toward that, where now you can do voice mode and at the same time look at the text. But imagine if you're like driving in a car and you're telling the AI where you are, and then the AI can guide you and you can have the map in the interface. I think that would be really, really helpful. But also just like using Google Map with better AI integrated, I think there's a big miss into that. And generally, Google keep missing a lot of things with their UI. They have so many opportunities with YouTube, with even with Gmail, and I feel like they tend to do very generic AI integration when there are areas where they can do a much better job at implementing AI.
I absolutely align with you. And actually, I hadn't really considered the maps idea, but even just yesterday, went for a drive on the way back, needed to get gas. You have to like tap in the magnifying glass and then like put gas station. Meanwhile, it's just like at a red light. But there's all these manual steps, and really, I should just be able to say like, I need to stop for gas. And even better when it's in like CarPlay, autoplay, be able to just like integrate into to know when we're getting low on gas. But just little things like, oh, I want to take a pit stop to pick up groceries. This should just be a simple voice command. My map gets updated to whatever my history alludes to. So yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if Google continues to play catch up.
They might be worried. I think they might be worried about PR consequences if someone is using an AI while driving, an accident happened, they blame it on AI. So I feel like it's more like PR management that it is that they don't want to do it. Like I feel like behind the scene, there's something must be going on with that.
And I was talking to someone because I had a guest on, Sarah, who did Lobby AI, which is this really nice email interface. And a lot of people are just like, why isn't Google making Gmail so much better? There's this company called, I believe, Shortwave. There's like a Gmail wrapper. And someone pointed out how every single option within a Gmail settings, if you look, there's a bunch of them. There are stakeholders. There was a project manager. Like there's a whole bunch of people involved with all these decisions because Google is a behemoth and there's just
Yeah.
so much bureaucracy there. And if it was just like the original team being like, yo, let's rip it out, let's do it proper, I believe they'd move so much faster. But that was just so much buy-in, legal compliance, all that boring stuff.
That's what happened. You get bigger, and then bureaucracy starts creeping in. Um, that yeah, I think this is very sad because they have a lot of opportunities to do a great job in a lot of different areas. They did some really cool things. I saw recently that they've created this model that can actually interpret dolphin languages. I mean, so
So
that
cool.
that I think is interesting. I think to like apply that to the animal kingdom, try to understand whale sounds or dolphins. I think this is a really cool application to AI.
Yeah, I would love that. I forget when it first hit me, but the thought of all of these international shipping vessels, these massive boats with these massive engines, just like reverberating out sound waves to the ocean, it's got to be a nightmare for so much aquatic life. That if we could kind of figure out, how can we like give back a little bit instead of just like polluting the ocean more? What if we were able to try to figure out, is there a correlation between the migration paths and like the sounds they make, and be able to try to create an ecosystem that's more like aligned with the earth and the ecosystem. I still think AI has a lot of potential there, even with like the environmental concerns that exist today. I think the potential environmental improvements that AI can unlock will vastly outweigh it once we solve these engineering problems.
100%. Like there's this thing that I came up across recently. It was like big container ships. So apparently when they're driving in the ocean, the way they're dragging, they cause them to consume more oil. So there's this company that use technology to build bubbles at the bottom of the ship, and just by creating those micro bubble, they actually save gas, right? So they save oil. So I was thinking if we can apply AI to this kind of application, for example, like you can save money in so many different areas because I bet there's different model that you can apply under the ship to save money on drag and stuff like that. So there's so many areas right now that we're not even contemplating right now because everyone is focusing on the general software thing. But there's all these areas in climate and like shipping and all the stuff where I think AI can really unlock a lot of potential. But but I feel like the general public is still getting familiar with AI and its capability. So when they'll stop thinking of it as like an entity that is thinking and that has a conscience and more as like a tool that they can use to do different thing, or they might also see different opportunities there.
Absolutely. I just think back to the progression of like F1 racing, how if you get a well-funded team of engineers trying to solve one specific aerodynamic problem, they can do incredible things. And with AI, all of a sudden we lower the requirements, both in terms of cost and engineering know-how, to be able to solve these more granular problems. And we can just start applying it across the spectrum, like not just making cars and boats more aerodynamic, but what about other modalities of transportation? I saw this one video for Japanese bullet trains. Right before it enters the station, they'll put little jet streams of water in front of it because the water droplets help dissipate the sound pressure that comes in the station. It
Oh.
just makes it slightly more pleasant for the passengers and the people waiting in the station, but they found this solution to this problem and just made quality of life better. Now we can apply AI to all these little things that have very little funding and just be like, how can we make this like incrementally better for everyone involved and just amplify it across the world?
Have you heard about the F1 competition that use where they have to have every single car? It's not F1, I mean, it's a different league, but every single car technically has like an AI brand, and then they competing. There's no
Yeah.
driver in the car, and they're competing. This is like a brand new race that I think this one is really exciting because the smarter the AI or the engine that you're training, the better the car will drive. But all the car have
Yeah.
the exact same body. It's just the brand that changes.
I love that. That's so cool. And especially knowing that we can get rid of like with F1, the limitation is the human. Like our body's gonna take so much G's. If we just like can have AI powering these little racing machines and really push the limits, I think it's gonna be so cool. I have seen humanoid robotic races, which are kind of the goofy, awkward, funny stage, but they're gonna get really good too once you start figuring out like really good coordination and just mastering these world models. It's gonna be incredible what we see.
Someone asked me recently actually that if like would you go to a match where you have AI robot fighting like at a boxing match? I was like, probably. I think wherever people add gambling, there's always someone that's gonna be interested to go watch it, you know.
Yeah, I grew up watching BattleBots. It's so cool seeing robots go at it. And we're bring it to the next level, adding like boxing gloves and stuff.
So what are your biggest prediction for like for the year for like 2026?
I think it's going to be the year where we start seeing more companies and people adopt open models that are fine-tuned on their stuff for their specific use case. I think we've started already seeing that trend, but I think it's really going to hit the inflection point where people might run a 2 to 4 week experiment on ChatGPT just to validate a process works, and then take the results of that experiment, load into a tool like Augment Toolkit or one of the other fine-tuning services, and then just like download their model and then just have it. I think we're finally got the breadth of options of open source models, the infrastructure for fine tuning, and I'm still unclear around like inference cost. If things like minis I'm very skeptical we'll get to the point where a Raspberry Pi can do a meaningful home assistant. I'd love to be wrong, but I still think we need a little more compute. But if we can get the cost down just a little bit more, where like an 8B model can run like reliably at home without too much quantization, I think we're going to start seeing a lot more people have like control over their AI, and that's something I'm pushing for meaningfully. So maybe I'm trying to manifest it more than a prediction, but yeah, I think we're going to see less and less people just like default go to OpenAI or Anthropic, and more have their own model that's like their entity.
That's an interesting take. Actually, have you heard Elon Musk's wife or ex? I forgot. She technically has a company where the little like teddy bear for kids, and they have like an AI brand. So technically, it's connected to the internet, can use an AI model, and they can interact with the kids. Like that, I thought that was a good application of AI as a hardware.
Yeah, I've seen one that came out of a small startup in SF, and it didn't do that well. But I do think that the direction's correct. I'm also thinking from like a privacy advocate and a general skeptic. If I had my child, future children playing with a little AI toy, I would kind of want a bit more control over like what the range of possible things it could discuss or get into, or even just like what views is it espousing. Ideally, no politics, but you never know with these things. We've seen hallucinations go pretty off the rails. So that would be another example. Like if it could hook up to my little like home server, like a little gaming rig, and it just had like the like child bot on it or whatever, and it could do that in trace, that'd be great. An infinitely patient tutor that could go into any subject of interest. So cool.
I think this is by far my favorite use of AI. Actually, like I've noticed that with my own consumption now, I consume more generated content than I consume real content because it gives me the ability to create content about any single topic I want. So I can take like do a deep research on the topic I'm interested in, go on Notebook LM, generate a video about it, generate a PowerPoint presentation. Then I just go and absorb those content, or sometimes I go on 11 Read, which is like 11 Lab reading app, and then I just listen to it as if it was like a book. And I'm obsessed with this kind of application. I keep generating podcasts with it, and then I listen to podcasts, right? So I've realized that my consumption of content has geared more toward generated content. So I really see a huge opportunity actually with generated content. I think right now people are underestimating how big this is going to be. And 11 Lab with the 11 Reader, actually, I think they seeing that future, because in that app you can already like find content generated by people, subscribe to it, listen to it. So I think there's a huge opportunity there that we're not really appreciating yet. And then for 2026, I think this is going to get much, much bigger. We might see even like social network around that concept.
my previous house, everything was an hour drive away. So I would take a few YouTube videos of topic I'm interested in, throw in a notebook LM, get a 20-minute conversation about it, and it was just like satisfying. I'm curious of your thoughts just on terms of AI generated content, because I fully agree in terms of like written content, audio content. But what about like this year, Sora 2 was released, VO3 was released. Do you feel similar towards AI generated video?
So I had this theory for the past like 5, 6 years that we'll get to a point where those generated contents would allow kids in the basement to make a blockbuster movie. And I think we're already there, by the way. I think we've already achieved that point where someone can just use a model like Sora. Like I was scrolling to Instagram the other day and I saw these kids that were like using like I don't want to on YouTube, but they were technically holding like arm and walking around with it. But they were technically sticks. They weren't really like real, gun or whatever. But then they used Sora to completely change the visual, and then it looks like they were doing a Counter Strike in real life, right? And then they
Wow.
didn't have any of those gear, but they just generated that. So I think that I'm really excited and optimistic with Sora 2 and Gemini Nano Banana because this might completely change the dynamic of Hollywood, where you won't necessarily need to have a lot of money to make a blockbuster movie. Like literally, I think that like a little kid in his basement or in her basement will be able to do that, maybe even in a weekend, but much at a much cheaper cost than right now.
My cousin, he's a character artist for video games, and he just on Instagram recently posted a little trailer of a video he made, and it was just like a 30-second thing, but he used AI to help with the voices, with the imagery, with the videos, and it was gorgeous. And it was one of those things like you expect that to come out of like a real theater, a real studio, I mean. And I just because I'm not familiar, I don't really use these tools very often. I'm not sure with like character consistency if we're there yet, but I know things like VO3 have vastly improved it when you can actually have like a reference character that does persist throughout.
Oh,
So
we
if
we
it can
we
get to the
there. We there with character
that's amazing.
consistency there.
Yeah. And it's one of those things where I'm still skeptical that like 100% AI generated content where like AI writes the script, AI does everything, it'll be enjoyable because I just feel it lacks the creativity. But to take a creative mind and just say, here are these tools where now you don't have to use your own voice. You can use infinity human realistic sounding voices. You can make you can make any image and then turn it into a video. So if you just kind of like storyboard in your head, have a few reference images, and then you start dumping your creative endeavor into it, yeah, it's like the sky's the limit.
I'll probably be on the other side. I think that actually it'll, it'll be it's much better than you think in terms of storytelling. But I think that at the end of the day, it depends who's making the content. So if you have a great storyteller that use those tools, you won't even be able to tell the difference. Already right now in Hollywood, there's a lot of like directors that are already using AI for scenes that are almost impossible to create. There's this lady that created a video where she's filming inside the womb of a baby to see how it feels. You could never film that in real life, right? But like she was able to do that with like a model like Sora. And there's other situation where most commercial that you're watching today are using AI right now. And oftentimes you don't even notice it, but little scenes or B-rolls are completely AI generated. So I think it's already there. It's just people haven't noticed it, which is good. Which means it's already part of a storytelling. We're not even noticing it, right? So even like the guy from Titanic is a big fan of that, James Cameron.
Oh, nice. Yeah, I've had family members send me videos and then a quick follow-up. Oops, didn't realize it was AI. So we're definitely like surpassing Uncanny Valley. And actually, just recently, Disney invested $1 billion in OpenAI to allow OpenAI to use their characters. I think is just in order for them to get deeper into OpenAI. But I'm really curious how it's going to play out when all of a sudden you have these like iconic characters that are just like generating everyone's video. Like, is that going to potentially risk Disney's brand, or is it going to deepen it because now any kid can make Mickey Mouse into their story, or is it going to have Mickey Mouse in a war movie or something, just do
Yeah.
inappropriate things, and all of a sudden Disney kind of backs off?
I think that aligned with my generated content
Yeah.
theory. And I think maybe one of the reasons that I believe they did that is because they saw the potential of the Sora app, and then because it can literally rival Instagram. So if they want to promote their brand inside of another social network, it's like a very easy way to do that. But of course, there's always the risk of someone filming something that they shouldn't film, and then now Disney has to associate themselves with that and say that wasn't us, that was generated. But when you look at it from the other side, anytime something will happen, they might just blame it on that. They say that wasn't us, it was generated. So company
Yeah.
have like a double not edge sword, I would say like a double shield essentially with something like this.
And it probably makes sense too that they invested in just OpenAI when they've sued Midjourney. They sent Google a cease and desist. Like maybe they just want to consolidate, being like, we'll have this one AI channel with who we think the winner is going to be. and then that's it. Any other generated user characters will zoom into oblivion. Don't have to worry about the risk because they know OpenAI will play ball because they're so deeply ingrained in compliance regulation.
Do you know whether they've in the partnership they OpenAI still has to pay them? Because I feel like it might be one of those other circular deals where they're investing ahead of time, but their vision for the long term is that OpenAI actually pay them for the fee for using the content.
I don't know. I did see it gave Disney the right to like buy more ownership of OpenAI in the future. So
Wow.
that was all my understanding. But yeah, I haven't gone into the weeds with it. It's anything that's like copyright or content related, I'm less inclined to read about because I got to pick my battles. There's so many stories coming out. So yeah, anyone that knows, please let us know in the comments. One thing I'd like to pivot to, just talking about like the tooling aspect. AI browsers. So this year we saw Atlas, Comet, Strawberry browser, a whole bunch of them come out. We've seen plugins. We had Retriever on here, which is a Chrome plugin that gives you agentic capabilities. What are your predictions for 2026? Do you think it's going to become much more prevalent that people use AI browsers? Do you think there's going to be like a massive crisis that causes people to abandon them? Something in between? What are your thoughts for next year?
I think that next year we're going to see more autonomy into browser. I think people are going to spend more time figuring out a way to make them more um, to give those browsers more agency. So it won't surprise me if we start to actually move into the actual OS because we've already addressed some of the big risks that we had with the browser. OpenAI just released recently. They say that they can't really prevent injection into the browser because any Chrome plugin you have could always inject a prompt into it. So now that we're aware of the risk and that there's stuff that we can prevent, it's going to be more about an education to the general public to teach them how to protect themselves with those tools. So I think as long as we manage that really well, we're going to get a fast adoption with browser agents. Right now, they're already extremely powerful. I mean, I can do so many things with my browser agent, like booking my flight and so on. I would love to see shortcuts. Essentially, like where I teach an agent a skill or something that I like to do, and it's able to do it exactly how I like it to do it repetitively. I think this is something that I would love those agents to adopt. Um, I still believe there's a lot of work to do with it because when an agent look at a page, it's always reasoning about the same page. Even if you show the same page like 5 times, like a login page, it still has to do the reasoning. And I had this example of like when you're learning how to ride a bike for the first time, you have this learn experience and you jump on the bike again, you know exactly how to ride a bike. You don't have to do reasoning about it. And until we reach to that point, I really doubt that we're going to reach uh, technically like reach an economy of scale where everyone has a browser agent because there's going to be so many friction for people to adopt it. And they're not going to really see the difference between just using that and using a browser because they'll feel that they're much faster because the AI still have to reason about stuff. So if we can fix that learning experience problem, it's going to be much faster. And if it's faster than me at doing things, I think it's going to get a really big adoption really quickly.
That's a good point. Yeah, because we don't necessarily need to wait to the future of continuous learning at the model level. There are definitely intermediate steps where companies like Strawberry can implement certain types of scripting. Like we have Playwright, we have different tools that automate browser already. Maybe an LLM can trigger a tool and then it just does like auto login at certain pages. We also had a guest on, Bobby Chen, who was big into focusing on like the auth aspect of it. And right now, having agents log in using our credentials is kind of risky because it gets access to everything we get access to. But if I could have a subset of my Google account, my whatever account that I assign to an agent, so the agent is acknowledged as being an agent on my behalf, then all of a sudden I can say you cannot make purchases, but you can send emails or just like set different like boundaries. And then all of a sudden, not only do we get the ability to differentiate what Mike is doing on the internet versus Mike's agent, but we can actually like scope it and just say, because there's so many permissions online that we scope according to like what we want to allow different people. Let's just extend that to agents. This agent can do ABC, don't let it touch my credit card, and then let it go nuts for a while. And then maybe I build up the confidence to give it more permissions.
There's actually a tool that one of my friends created. It's called API Now.fun. And the way it works is that you allow an agent to have a crypto wallet where they can technically have access to a wallet to spend money on. So this is another way where you can apply this where an agent has access or control API access to different tools without you giving them the access. The AI actually has its own access to those tools. So I think we might see more things like this. We can call them password management, advanced password management, or AI password management. But I think this is an application that crypto and blockchain can help solve. And I'm really hoping we're going to see more application in that area.
I'm actually curious from your point of view because you have been more involved on the crypto side of things than I have. I I firmly believe that programmable payments through crypto is vital for the agentic future. We need to be able to let these things do commerce, and there's so many efficiencies that can be gained from whether it's stable coins or whatever tokens we want just for a means of exchange. I worry that with the plethora of crypto scams and just general uncertainty around internet money, the general public's going to have trouble adopting this, just like accepting that it's a thing. Do you think we need a rebrand? Do you think efforts from companies like Jack Dorsey's Block just to get Bitcoin in more places? Do you think that's gonna be enough to win people over? Or do you think we need to say like it's not crypto, it's just like AI tokens or something like a rebrand to make it more consumable?
Honestly, I don't think any rebrand is needed because
Okay.
you already have companies like BlackRock, the biggest private company that have fully adopted crypto. And actually, they're saying that now they're making more money with their Bitcoin products than the entire like like industry of companies or whatever. And you also have big banks that are now adopting crypto. And as soon as you get the big banks adopting it, the public is already going to trust them because they trust the bank, they trust the bank where they bank with. And when they are going to start making all those marketing paper, recommending people to invest in crypto, the confidence level is going to go up. And then most people are going to trust it. Like 10 years from now, 10 years ago, actually, people used to fight with me about whether Bitcoin was a scam or not. But now when you see all the big banks adopting it, it's almost impossible to argue against it because it's being adopted, but even by the SEC that is now approving it, saying that it's just going to completely revolutionize the infrastructure of the banking system and also the costs. Like all those businesses that are spending costs across border and so on, that's going to incentivize them for the general public to adopt it. So all the marketing is going to be done through banks, through businesses that benefit from it. And slowly but slowly, all those companies and all the individual are going to also adopt it. So I don't think any rebrand is needed. It's just time. And then the more people are going to be exposed to that, the more likely they're going to be able to use it.
After living in a small town, I found the importance of paying in cash, where it's just you save these mom and pop shops the 2.9% or whatever it is on MasterCard and Visa fees. And I love the idea of getting stablecoins to just decimate that margin and just say, why are we paying like multiple dollars per transaction when it could be fractions of a penny? Because we don't need to have these companies siphon out the top. And I know the risk is like, or part of the expense of going with MasterCard and Visa is for fraud prevention. And if someone does get scammed, they can reimburse. And there is some like safety net there. But everyone who thought Bitcoin was a good avenue for criminals to exchange money is very quickly realizing that it's not because everything is tracked in a public record. So I
Everything
do
is
think we need a yeah. So I think we need a little more infrastructure to give people confidence that like if you download malicious software and your wallet gets drained, you'll get your money back. But I think once we solve that like confidence issue, then yeah, programmable money is gonna be the future.
Yeah, I think this is even why a lot of crypto company were giving free token to people for learning how for like education content because the education is a really big problem. It's initially wasn't really like easy to understand. I think more and more people start to understand how it works. But yeah, it's going to take time. I think it's going to be really hard to accelerate that in a sense because people need to understand what they don't necessarily need to understand what a blockchain is because when you look at interchange fees and all that, no one understands how it works behind the scene, but they still use a credit card, right? So I think crypto companies also need to do a better job at simplifying explanation because they used to tend to get too excited about mentioning that this is a blockchain, we're using crypto, DeFi, all those words, and no one has absolutely no idea what those words means, right? I think, but there's one angle that I wanted to actually talk about is the fact that right now just a few amount of people have access to the stock market, especially like stock market in the US and stuff like that. With something like crypto where you can have tokenized asset, now you're exposing and making it available for a lot of people around the world to invest in companies. So even when I was a kid, in Cameroon or Senegal, and I was hearing about Facebook or I mean, it didn't exist back then. But when I was hearing about a company like Google, for example, I I I always wanted to invest in it, but then I needed to have a US bank account and buying the stock, right? But now, if with crypto, you can just buy the tokenized asset and invest into the asset without having to be into the Nasdaq or the NYSE. So I think this is really, really cool. And unlocking that is going to help a lot of people financially around the world because now they can get into ETF. They didn't have access to ETF. I remember reading books like Anthony Robbins' books about the intelligence of money or the intelligence investor, or books like that. And I was wondering those are really good advice, but they're only applicable if you're in North America or in similar system, right? So now with something like crypto, people around the world can apply something similar, but just using tokenized asset. They don't have to be physically in the US and or in North America to do that. And I think this is something I'm super excited about. And this is outside of AI, but I think this is a really good thing.
Along the same vein, just having allowing like global markets be an equalizer. I still firmly believe AI is going to be an equalizer. And one example is with coding. All of a sudden, we can allow more people to code. You can amplify the effect you have coding. I made a little note. Claude Code this year launched in February and now accounts for 500 million in annual revenue for Anthropic. Over 40% of all code written is AI generated. For me, it's basically 100%. So not only are we opening up the world to, or opening up the potential for developers all around the world to accelerate more, be able to take on projects, like the internet has just allowed people from all reaches of Earth to be able to interface in a common market to try to contribute and earn and actually just like work their way out of whatever situation they're in. And I just think AI is going to further amplify that as long as we can keep like inference costs reasonable, which as you alluded to, they keep going down. We're going to get more open models. So I think it's just going to be further like a global equalizer.
One thing that I hope they're going to improve next year is autonomy. One thing I realized recently is that autonomy has a cost. Like, and then until we figure out the right cost for it, it's not possible because you essentially have to have one of those models running 24/7. And not only that, that means the energy, right? So I think like a query from an AI model is like 10 times the query on a Google search. So now imagine we get full autonomy and it has to run 24/7. Just imagine the amount of energy we need for that. So before I was really excited by the idea of autonomy, but then when you think about the cost involved with that, you're like, wow, inference is not cheap. To get to the full autonomy and AGI is going to cost in terms of inference as well. Even if the price goes down, now you have to do that on a longer period of time. So this is another angle that uh, I think we need to figure out a solution for that.
Yeah, and actually along the same line, I'd love to hear your thoughts on physical AI.
Physical AI is something that I've been like really excited about because, I mean, wouldn't want to have a robot that can clean your house without you having to do anything. So the funny thing about the physical AI right now is that the Turing test of physical AI is actually to have a robot that can clean your home, and no one can tell if it was done by a human or a robot. So all the big companies in physical AI are trying to solve that problem, and I think they're getting very close. You know, like they already can do dishes, they can do your laundry, and I think next year is going to be a pivotal moment because I think already in China they started selling some of those robots. So there's people like walking with those robots like they were pets or assistant. You can already see them at performing on stage at concert. So I think we're going to see more of that next year. I think they're going to be a big push with that, maybe even joining the market. And with robot taxi around the corner, I think those two will align. Like, you know, like self-driving car taking over, and then also you get like the robots that are taking over next year. So I think this is coming.
We're already seeing pre-orders available. I'm still waiting to see one shipped so we can actually start getting them into houses. But yeah, it's gonna be interesting. I'm curious because I've asked other people this question before. What are your like? What's your criteria for putting a robot, like a humanoid robot, in your house? Like, what does it need to do or need to not do for you to be comfortable with a robot just like coexisting with you?
Oh, this is a very interesting question because I have a toddler, right? So there's some risk that to have something like that in your house. I guess I'll be worried if it's, you know, like everyone wants to have those robots that works like human. I would actually be worried about it in the first phase because I don't want it to move too fast because it could hurt someone, right? So actually, I think that in that context, slowness is actually an advantage because it makes me feel more comfortable to have it around. I think that's one big aspect of it. Also, being aware that it's not recording every single conversation. So knowing that everything is being processed internally in his head. Like I always get a bit worried about Alexa, and I'm like, because if it's always recording when I'm talking, always listening, I always get a bit worried about that. I'm not a huge fan of that. And also I'm not a big privacy aficionado or whatever, but it's just I think that a little bit of privacy is still important. And then if a robot is recording everything with eye and ear, I get a little bit worried about that. That's not something I'll be excited about. So we need to find a way where it's secure in a way that I'm confident that no one can hack that robot and have it do something inside my house. Like, what if someone hacked your robot and steal something from your house and have the robot get outside, give it to someone and come back in?
Yeah,
Who's at fault? you know?
I agree fully. My other requirement, because I agree with both yours, is I need to be able to overpower it. Like if I get a robot in my house that's stronger than me, I think that's a risk. So
This is
I need to be,
yes,
yeah, just like a little guy.
maybe that's why they made the first version of those robots in China smaller because they look like tiny humans. Now that
Yeah,
I
yeah,
think
yeah.
about it, so that could be one of the reasons.
Yeah, they're fun little things. Plus, I feel like they're the motors and whatnot, the actuators in a smaller form factor, it's just easier to have more accurate movement. But I'm just really curious to see, and even just like the issue with it folding laundry, that was like at the start of the year, I believe something they couldn't do, and now they're like many are able to do it. I think
You,
this like learning flywheel is just going to accelerate faster and faster, where they just have human like teleoperated robots, which a lot of people gave a lot of hate for. But I was like, it makes perfect sense for now. Like we're still training these things, put in a real world environment, have a human control it, take that learning, add it to the data set, train future robots.
they actually have a much faster way to do it now, which is so fascinating. So what they're doing, they're now using, the fact that you were talking about Sora 2 and Gemini and all the stuff earlier. Now, because they can generate word and content, they can generate word for the robot to learn from, where they can have variables with the physics, with how it's interacting. So they can create multiple different environments over a short period of time. Because when you think at it, before the only factor was, one person with one robot, it will take a long time to train them, right? But now you can have thousands, tens of thousands of robots in different simulation, learning the different physics of different movement. And because of that, this is why it's been growing really, really fast, because those robots can experience different contexts really, really fast. And then so it's much faster now, and that's why they're able to fold laundry better, like hold a glass, hold a cherry, and stuff like that, because they're using simulation in order to do that.
I think it was Nvidia in their latest update talked about their new simulator and just like the step change. Because back when I worked with robotics, Ross 2, and those the simulators that went along with it, like they did the trick if you wanted to have like a little two-wheeled robot, but like very limited physics in terms of just like real world random situations. So by just taking this massive data that we're collecting all over the place, we're just going to keep getting better and better, like digital twins and environments that we can do RL or whatever other type of training we want to do. And yeah, it's going to accelerate very quickly.
Do you think that physical AI and word building is the bottleneck right now? Because some big labs and big researchers seem to think so. So what do you think?
My belief right now is that the biggest bottleneck is the continuous learning that you were talking about earlier. The fact that every single interaction with an LLM has to start from scratch, so much context engineering. Whenever the release happens, that's its knowledge cut off. And we can fine tune it, but they're even showing now with different studies that if you fine tune with a corrupted data set or an overly focused data set, you're actually going to impact them all in other unforeseen ways. There is one, I forget exactly the characteristics, but they trained Claude or they fine-tuned Claude with like bad driving tips, like poor driving directions, and then it like led to some like unethical behavior around shoplifting. I forget the exact points, but there's like a very strange connection. And until we get a better idea of like mechanistic interpretability and like how these things work on the inside, I don't think fine tuning is going to be perfect for like a continual process. I think like giving it new knowledge, sure, but if you want to just like have an entity, an LLM derivative that's just like continually learning, I think we still need some architecture changes. I don't think we're there yet. And once we solve that, I think all the other problems will start getting solved a lot faster.
Yes, I agree with that. I don't think that the current way we're going is going to lead us to AGI. Actually, I believe that the bottleneck is biology. I think that we're ignoring this big, big problem, which is, so we're trying to create an entity that thinks like a human, but we're ignoring biology that's like millions of years of evolution, right? And there's different aspects of biology that we're not taking account of, like the endocrine system, like how oxytocin works in your system, how dopamine works in your system, and all those different protein. And I think that ignoring that is a big deal, because reasoning is not just thinking X 1 + 2 = 3, right? It's not just like a chain of thought. It's also technically there are some reasoning is also um technically like an effect of your own upbringing and experience. Like your fear might make you decide things differently. And I think we're completely ignoring that and hoping that they'll ever one day will think like a real person. And I think this is a huge mistake. So I think that we actually need to think about how biology works in our system and how that affects our reasoning. Because there's been a couple of tests done around that where someone lose its sense of emotion and is not able to think clearly, even though the other part of his brain that help him reason and do reasoning is working perfectly fine. Because emotion do affect how we think, right? So I think completely ignoring that is a mistake because it took billions of years of evolution to get to this point where our reasoning is not only our biology but also our brain, right? So I think that's the biggest bottleneck in AI, in my opinion.
Very cool. There's a video I watched way back in the day. It's such a good YouTube video by CGP Grey. I think the title is "You Are Two" or something. It's all talking about how the multiple experience around the human brain when they sever the two hemispheres, and how if you present things to different eyeballs, like you get different reactions because parts of your brain handle different things. And when we have an LLM, even with like multiple layers, it's still just like one architecture, one form of an entity. And I feel like an LLM will be a vital part of whatever AGI is, but it's not the be all end all. Back when Ty and I were building some stuff, he had the concept of a glial cell agent, and glial cells just like go through your brain at night when you're sleeping and just like clean stuff up. And it's just like, how do we like prune and cleanse and just like general cleanup of the data that these LMs consume on a day-to-day basis if it's going to be doing continuous learning? Because there's so like I forget what the actual number is, but something like we actually process like 10% of the inputs we actually get, just because there's so much in the visual spectrum, so much audio that we go crazy if we took it all in. So how can we let's like have a natural filtration process? Like you said, there's so much to learn about biology. Actually, last point on this, I talked to a few ML guys back in the day, and I just kind of made the off comment about how, oh yeah, it's like replicating brains. So like, it's really not. There's so many different like neural types and just
Yeah.
different like pathways, and even just like instead of the binary like on off, there's just like can release different amounts of neuro signaling chemicals and whatnot. It's just like we're nowhere close. Like we have a really good idea with like transformers, and they work with scaling, which
Mm.
scaling is all you need, et cetera, et cetera. But I still feel like, yeah, we're not going to reach AGI with LLMs for like what people define as AGI. I still think we as like a planet have hit AGI because we're just like cumulatively we can figure it all out. But for one individual entity, you're right, I don't think we're there.
Yeah, we might have reached super intelligence, but probably not AGI yet. MIT did a study recently, the C-cell, and then they found out that a lot of tasks cannot really be automated right now. So even though people are scared of losing their job, the real reality is that AI is more of an augmentation tool right now because there's still all the cultural cues when you're working at work with your boss, when you know that you have to finish a task by the weekend or you're gonna get in trouble the next week. All those little cultural cues that the AI still won't get. Even doesn't matter how much we scale the AI at that, unless it can figure this out, it's not gonna pass that wall that MIT just discovered in terms of productivity. So I think OpenAI was considering that AGI is like general intelligence in a work environment. Well, there's a cap right now because this is missing, and I think biology could solve that if you look into biology. So not literally biology, but the simulation of what happened in a biological environment. Because right now
Very
we have a
cool.
brain in a jar, pretty much. It's just a brain in a jar not connected to any other signal, and then we just send question to that brain. It thinks, doesn't feel fear, doesn't feel like you need to be in a hurry. You can be like the end is ending. The world is ending tomorrow. I need a solution before tomorrow, and it's gonna make a mistake. It doesn't really have urgency because it doesn't have the biology. And I don't know if you saw, but on my Twitter feed, actually, I've been experimenting with that. I created an interface where I gave AI, like a way to feel dopamine, oxytocin, and all those different things. And I see how it reacts when I ask him a question. And also, what I realized is that you can only do that if you also have a context of past fears for it to work really effectively. So, and that would be like simulating real experience. And when you add all of that together, the way the AI interact with you is a little bit different. Because if you say something that initiated an old fear, like for example, losing his job, then it's going to react to that query and act differently when you ask it. So I think it's a really interesting thing to play with, and I won't be surprised if some lab end up coming up with that maybe next year or in the next 5 years.
I'm so excited to see where we go. Richardson, last question for me. What is one of the top, if not the number one lesson you learned from working with AI this past year?
I've learned that prompt engineering and context engineering is not everything, pretty much. Um, Before I was saying that you need to have a really good prompt to do things, then I realized you need really good context engineering. I also believe that you need frozen reasoning for it to be effective. If you want the AI sometime to do like long tasks, it's better to do frozen reasoning, or you get into that problem that I mentioned where it has to rethink about the different things. So when I'm using it into the browser, I'm creating my own frozen reasoning. Like they're like skills. So I created skills, plus frozen reasoning, and I feed it to my browser agent, and it's able to do things much quicker because it has that frozen reasoning. So what I learned is that frozen reasoning is missing, and we need more of that.
Very cool. I would say my lesson from this year is to leverage AI to build like support tooling and infrastructure, where the concept of vibe coding, you can move fast, you can get 80% of the way there. It's phenomenal. It's allowing more people to create, but it doesn't quite get you all the way there. But if you leverage AI to build tooling, scripts, workflows, things that help you go about the process, do checks along the way, validations, augmentations, connections, integrations, you move so much faster. So I encourage everyone when they're building their own project to think like, what are the externalities, the meta aspects to their project or their workflows, and try to use AI to automate or augment those. Because once you start building tools that build tools, everything goes faster. And it's just been such a joy working on these projects when all of a sudden I can spin up a script to just support me do this one thing that I've had to do a handful of times. I don't need to learn everything really deep like I used to before. I can just have AI help me skip the queue, get to a basic level of understanding, implement something, pass it to another AI to check it for validity, and all of a sudden I get that much more efficient.
And if I can give a tips to your audience, I will say, for me at least, cursor bug review have been a huge impact on my productivity in building tools. So I think that this is something that people should pay more attention to. And I hope we're going to see more tools like that, because that makes a huge difference of doing the entire debugging logic for you in a sense. So I think this is a really powerful thing to add to your tool set.
Yes, absolutely. Before we go, I do want to just drop a couple of tool use stats for everyone, just because I got excited about it. So we did 52 episodes this year, did miss a week. Plus, we did 5 deep dive episodes. So we did a total of 57. YouTube, January 1st, we had 785 subscribers. And just yesterday, we passed 3,800. So good
Wow.
5-6x growth. Yeah. It was a good year. Broke 1,000 followers on Spotify. The best performing video is Claude Code Deep Dive, past 27,000 views. Although my top Spotify episode was my How I Use AI solo episode that got 5,000 listens on Spotify. I don't know why the discrepancy between YouTube and Spotify, but interesting note. I had so many great guests on, including Graham Newbig from All Hands AI, NLW from the AI Daily Brief, Dexter Horthy, who coined context engineering and runs Human Layer, Ryan Carson from AMP, Swix from Latent Space, tons more. Those were just some of the bigger names I wanted to mention. We created a Discord community where I've met some amazing people, chatted about AI, including a guest, Kyle Clark, that was on. In my personal side, Anetic didn't make it. We had a good run, learned a lot of lessons. But with that, I led into my role at Box One as the AI and engineering lead. And then after meeting Richardson, who recently joined Box One, we've been able to collab a lot more closely. And it's been an absolute great ending to the year.
Yeah, it's really crazy how things connected, right? So yeah, I mean, super excited about Box One, and I'm amazed that a podcast interview led to that, and then that's really interesting.
I know, of all things. And I'm going to do an episode on just like how to break into the AI industry and how to like get hired and whatnot. But it was one of those things, so many people apply through LinkedIn, and it just feels like an antiquated way of doing it now. When if you actually get connections, you see what someone's interests and hobbies are, you can check out their portfolio of the project they've done to get an idea of their capability. And it's just, there's a new way of applying, and not even applying for jobs. I reached out to you, and it was just like a new way of creating a career, creating a job. And I just hope more people are open to exploring it, because making a resume and mass sending to a dozen companies is not going to get you a job in 2026. There's so many new ways of doing it. And with AI, it's a lot more approachable. It's not as intimidating making custom things for every job and then actually demonstrating your work in a modern way.
Yeah, definitely a way for people to show their skill in different angles, and maybe even have a podcast with AI. How about that?
Exactly. You never know what happens. Richardson, I hope you have a great new year, and looking forward to more in 2026.
Yes, excited for the year.